Are uni rankings worth a damn? Especially among nationalists, uni rankings are often a dick measuring competition along the lines of, look, my country has more unis in the top 500. My country is more educated. But even among the general population, the least people have an idea what this uni ranking actually entitles, which is why I want to make this video. But who the heck am I to even have a valid opinion about this topic? Someone with reason. You don't necessarily need a uni degree to understand the problem with all of this, but to give some validity to those that want it, I did my bachelor's in material science in one of the TU9, not to detour myself too much, and I will be done with my master's in a couple of months. What is the TU9? It is Germany's answer to market its technical universities so people inside and outside of Germany go like, you're studying in one of the TU9s? That's like the German Stanford. I can guarantee you most people don't even know that the TU9 exists, even among the students of the TU9. That being said, when you look at uni rankings, you generally think top uni means best uni, right? That's how rankings work. Top means better. But the question is, what does better mean in this case? The general population might say better education and higher quality students, right? And the answer is, well, maybe. First things first, a short disclaimer. This is going to be from my perspective and my bias, and it mostly applies to the engineering disciplines. I have no idea how things are with chemistry or medicine, but I would assume that it's not fundamentally different, at least from what I could hear and know. Also, even if I might sound rather negative with all of this, the video doesn't mean that I hate my uni. I'm actually quite happy with it, and other than the education I received, my university life, despite being horrible, humbled me and made me into a better person, so I would do things all over again if I had a choice. Now that out of the way, we have to differentiate the question of better quality universities in two parts. First education and then research. With respect to education, the fundamental question is, do you get a better education in unis that are higher in the uni ranking? To answer this, you first have to understand how a uni works, how a professor is being made. You obviously start as a student, you get your bachelor, then your master, you do PhD in order to get your doctor title, you follow up maybe with a postdoc where you do scientific research at a uni for a project a professor is accompanying, you get yourself a habilitation, which essentially means that you have to prove that you are someone capable, you apply for a job as a professor, and you become one. Sounds easier than done, but in Germany the average age of someone that got his or her habilitation is at 42. This is a process that takes decades. Now here's the first problem you may or may not face, and that may or may not have a negative impact on the quality of your education. Does a respective university offer access to scientific papers that are presented by, let's say, Elsevier, or to make it more general, Google Scholar? This may sound like an obvious question. After all, a university should offer access to the world of science, and obviously scientists should be sharing information to progress humanity, but no. That's not the case. Not all universities offer this access. Some papers, aka scientific articles, are offered for free, but more often than not, it's behind a paywall. At least the most recent ones. Furthermore, papers are essentially a lottery. You can see the abstract in all of them, but a lot of times you have to know the specifics of the experiment that was conducted in order to see whether or not the paper is in any form or shape useful to you. So if you have no free access, you may pay for a paper that is completely useless to you. If you have no access to your university, you're hard pressed to look at the local library of your university, which may only have information that are, let's say, at 10 years old. This may not sound like much, but it makes a fundamental difference in research. 10 years can mean that you're either working on an outdated theory or you already have access to someone that proved that the theories are outdated. To give you an example, I did my bachelor thesis about the mechanical properties of specific high entropy alloy, and hundreds of papers were saying that Hare effects are fundamental properties of high entropy alloys. I'm not going to go into detail, but essentially Daniel B. Miracle, a scientist working on the US Air Force, did a meta-analysis and pointed out that this theory is nonsense because people were taking a specific set of elements together while ignoring other elements, which naturally resulted in specific results. To make it a bit easier to understand, imagine I want to know if a specific ceramic can survive a fall from my balcony, so a lot of scientists go and throw a metal ceramic mix and say, duh, it does survive. Well, yes, but that was not the question I had. However, does this even matter? Does it matter that you have access to scientific papers when you are doing your bachelor degrees or your master's degree? No. The first reason is you can pirate all scientific work. It's not hard to figure out which site offers them either. As long as you have internet access, you can download whatever you want to from wherever you want to. It's not uncommon for students to do so either. The second reason is, even if you don't have access to the latest knowledge, it doesn't mean that you're handicapped in your ability to learn how to work in a scientific manner. Even a local library is enough for that. But does it not open the problem of the quality of education? Meaning, don't students on average have less knowledge, since not everyone wants to go through the hassle? Not necessarily, because you don't know how much effort the individual student put into his or her education, and you don't know the environment of the student. To give you a few examples, example 1, I had a colleague that studied 2 weeks prior to a very hard exam. They had excellent short-term memory, passed the exam, and forgot everything 2 days after the exam. Now on paper, this particular person, or these particular people, have excellent knowledge. In practice, the knowledge of this person is non-existent. Example 2, when I first started at uni, the course of physical chemistry had a catalog of 100 questions. Students just had to review these 100 questions, and the exam consisted of 13 questions out of these 100 with slightly changed numbers. This course existed for the second semester, so when I got to my second semester, obviously the professor had to change, the catalog scrapped, and a completely new exam had to be created based on the goodwill of the new professor. You can imagine that this course did not have as many people passing as prior. Here's an example of how it went for the people that started with me. And that's just the number of people that participated. Most people didn't because they knew they wouldn't pass. Similar stuff, by the way, happened in multiple modules with me. The professor for physics changed when I wanted to write the exam. The professor for electrochemistry changed when I wanted to write the exam. The professor for technical mechanics didn't change, but was known to be an a-hole when it came to exams. You get the idea. Example 3. I know for a fact that some professors groom students, not in a sexual way, hopefully. They for instance say, I will be in this bar tonight. So when the specific students gather, they talk with the professor. And sometimes the talk ends up with what may or may not come in the exam. And lastly, example 4. Some people have won the lottery by being born in an academic family where the parents support their children in their choice to get into the same field as them. Meaning, material science parents can help the material science children to graduate in flying colors. And I can guarantee you they do. Not because they're exceptionally more intelligent, but because they get to engage in the field months, if not years prior through free trials thanks to their parents. They can also afford a tutor, which isn't cheap. Usually it's around the range of 20 to 30 euro per hour, if not higher, and you have multiple subjects per semester. Or they can just ask their parents. As a contrary example, if I have a question, I either ask the tutor at a specific date once a week, and hopefully the tutor made it easy to follow or even bothered to spend some time to explain, or I spent hours on my own trying to figure out how things work. But some might say, well, good reputation unis attract more intelligent people, especially from academic families, improving the overall educational engagement of the students. Not by my experience, because usually what happens is that these people already come from an educational background where they are highly praised. They enter uni with a high ego and overzealous reviewing, resulting in an increased engagement between the particular student and the professor, not between other students, resulting in the grooming topic I've mentioned. Of course, this highly depends on the person. Some might be very kind and social, but in my experience, the people that are most engaged in uni are usually the least social ones. And just because someone is good in studying, or to be more specific, just because someone made studying their life, it doesn't mean that you will necessarily become friends with that person, or that you even want to be friends with that person, or that you even want to speak with that person. Some people are introvert and naturally don't want a lot of social engagement. What I'm trying to say is, more intelligent people is not necessarily more social and educational interaction among students, because your intelligence says nothing about your character, your social capabilities, or your struggles in life. Your looks, by the way, also influences all of this. I personally saw how certain professors give you more attention when you're an attractive female, and how certain people that are socially awkward but good at studying are particularly interested in lending their help to mentioned attractive person. By no means does this mean that attractive females are evil and bad. It's not what they asked for, but it means that you can have your uni life significantly easier by just being pretty. In my experience, it even enhances your capabilities to get better marks. It's not just a matter of reaction, it's a matter of getting away with bad answers. Keeping all of this in mind, it's safe to say that your education is primarily dependent on the goodwill of the respective professors, your individual effort, and the environment you luckily or unluckily found yourself in. So for your average Joe, for the crushing majority of graduates and students, does it matter if you study in a uni that is in the top 500? Absolutely not. The unis in top rankings provide better education. It's a complete lottery. You may get it, you may not. It entirely depends on the professor. Some professors just repeat their presentations for decades the exact same way. Others update them yearly based on the new discoveries and research results. But how about work? Don't companies react more positive if you graduate from a uni with a good reputation? At first, yes, when you freshly enter the workforce. But after a couple of years of work experience, companies are not going to ask you where you graduated from, but what you did in your previous work. Your work experience, even internships, play a much bigger role in getting a job than the sole reputation of your university. Worst case, you will be looking for a job a couple of months longer, which is entirely irrelevant in the scope of your life. So, is there anything left to say? Uni rankings are complete lotteries when it comes to education. Isn't that what I'm saying? Not entirely, which brings me to the second part of my video. The aspect of research, and for that we have to look at how uni rankings are made. There are a variety of rankings with a variety of pages and organizations, but as a rule of thumb, we can look into the criteria provided by Elsevier. Elsevier is one of the most known places where scientific papers are available. Papers, again, are essentially scientific articles done by researchers. So if you look at this, you get an idea what criteria are being considered. I will spare the analysis on what is subjective and what isn't, but I want to give special attention to the following criteria: staff to student ratio, doctorate to bachelor ratio, institutional income, research, citation. With research and citation taking the bulk of the evaluation, what do these things have in common? Funding. The more money a uni gets, the better equipment can be bought and more personnel can be hired. As a result, more students can be accompanied, potentially even scholarships for a PhD given, access to papers provided, and hence more research done. To give you an example, for the analysis of VSCA, a lot of papers consider using multi-beam optical stress sensor in order to measure the distribution of stress on the sample surface to correlate VSCA to stress gradients. I'm not aware that my uni has a MOS device. It's a fairly new system with limited usage, and you can compensate it by doing finite element method modeling, aka simulations. The point is that having such a system alone can provide more research and thus more papers, which increases the ranking of the university on the international scale. What is also not considered in these rankings are two things. First, some countries have a heavy focus on papers in their respective language, like Japan or China, which reduces the amount of potential citations that can be done. Compare this to, for example, the US, where everyone writes in English. The rankings give a huge edge to English-speaking countries. Second, quite often professors overseeing PhD students or bachelor and master students end up giving a well-suggested paper or book written by the respective professor. Sometimes it's a PhD student suggesting a paper written by themselves. As a student whose supervisor and reviewer are suggesting books, you will do much, but you won't reject citing the paper or book heavily suggested to you. Meaning, the number of citations can artificially be pushed up. This gives a massive advantage to well-funded universities, since they can afford more research and people and thus recommend more papers to other peoples. Not everyone does that, but as a student, you most definitely heard it from someone studying somewhere else or in your university. I'm not aware of bachelor and master theses playing any role in citations, but papers written by PhD students definitely do. As a rule of thumb, I would say that higher ranking means better facilities for research. At the very least, better funding is guaranteed. But does this mean that the research is better or more innovative or more useful? For starters, research is done internationally. Once you have access to papers and ResearchGate, you essentially interact with scientists all over the world. I also already gave an example from my bachelor thesis, but I can give you a current up-to-date modern example for my current master's thesis as well. Viscors are essentially needles that grow out of specific metals. They can become plasma and destroy your equipment, which happened with 3 satellites in the 1990s. They can also cause short circuits, rendering your electronic device useless. Long story short, people don't know why they're growing, so research is done. And this particular research that is being done in the past decades is all over the place. Some people record maximum whisker length, some whisker density as number per square unit, some only look at the average whisker length, and in the end, no one knows which particular method would result in more whisker as a more volumetric amount of whisker. We have decades of research by leading scientists from universities all over the globe with nothing to show for. However, for the respective unis, it's brilliant because the number of published papers go upwards. So yet again, what is important in terms of quality is not how many facilities are made available and how well these researchers are paid, but how well and innovative the individual researchers work. In case of the whisker topic, people like Karpov or Bianco or Tu made much larger contributions to the progress of the topic than hundreds of other researchers. So does the uni ranking serve any purpose then? I would say as a general and rough estimate about how well research can be done, yes, the top 1000 unis most definitely have the necessary facilities and funding to do proper research, which is why I wouldn't bother making a dick measuring competition along the lines of my uni's better because it has a higher ranking. At least not at the top 1000. The individual researchers are much more important for that matter than how many papers are being published. As an example, Thunderfoot, also known as Philip A. Mason, graduated from the University of Brigham, and although that university is not among the top 10, Mr. Mason is a reputable researcher cited many times around the globe, which speaks volumes about his quality as a researcher. He is most definitely not falling behind researchers from Stanford, Harvard, or Oxford. But, and this is a very big but, you should look into what the university is famous for. As an example, the University of Heidelberg is known for its medical department. You can still major in physics there, but most of the funding most likely goes into the medicine department. I still don't think that it makes much of a difference, but if you want to become a researcher in a uni, then maybe a technical university suits you better. So what about the difference between researchers from unis in the top 10 and researchers from unis in the top 1000? It doesn't exist. You may have a larger amount of reputable researchers in, let's say, Stanford than compared to the University of Ankara, but it doesn't equal to the University of Ankara being less relevant or having only low-value researchers. As an example, Orhan Çakır, a scientist from the University of Ankara, is one of the most cited Turkish scientists and one of the most cited globally. I of course can't speak about the quality of the amount of research done by any of these scientists, but the point stands. Hence, in my opinion, the uni ranking is only relevant if you want to become a researcher yourself, since it's likelier that you have better funding and more equipment in reputable unis. Other than that, the entire uni ranking is a tribal dick measuring competition for the masses. The only advantage you get as an average graduate from reputable unis is the reputation you can initially carry into your job application and a massive ego you can display to people because unga bunga, my uni has a larger